Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I hope you're all well. It's, what, 6:30 p.m. GMT, and I'm bringing you some important information because there's a lot of propaganda out there, and I want to talk about propaganda today. The situation in Ukraine is awful by the look of it, for all reports. There's a war going on. And whenever there's a war going on or about to happen, the propaganda is off the chart. And that's what I want to talk about today. Hi, horror fan, how are you? I'm very well, thank you. Keep speaking truth to power, says your words in sight are golden. Thanks very much, that's really, I appreciate that. Hi, Tangled Up in Blur, hi to you. Pirate Asylum says a flood of misinformation everywhere. Yeah, there really is, on all sides. And we're going to talk about that tonight. Hi, Bluebell and Steve Richter. Right. Hi, everybody. I'm going to get straight into this because today, children, we're going to talk about propaganda. Propaganda comes in many forms. And I don't want to show you in tonight's stream incidences of, blatant propaganda that's in your face. I don't need to talk about, I don't want to talk about the worst cases of propaganda. I want to talk about the subtle propaganda, because often propaganda isn't just what's said, it's what's not said. And when I say what's not said, I mean not said on a regular basis. Because we know that when it comes to propaganda, it's over and over and over that it's repeated. Repeat a lie over and over and then it becomes truth. Isn't that what the old saying is? For instance, when I say when it's stuff that it's not, so no, what, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to it. I don't want to talk just about instances of awful propaganda, of which there is plenty to choose from right now. I'll give you an instances of some propaganda that's in your face. I mean, this is back from 2013, from when Obama was president. Do you remember him? Obama? Remember how wonderful he was? So this is 2013. In the long run, wars make us safer and richer, the Washington Post said. Alan McLeod caught that. It was propaganda that led you to believe that Obama was a peaceful president. It's a lack of reporting on his wars. 7 of them. He inherited 2, maybe 3. You could maybe say Iran. But he inherited Iraq and Afghanistan from Obama and took it to 7. And here they are. This is from Shadowproof, by the way. I think that's Kevin Gottsdolers. I think that's Kevin Gottsdolers. Or certainly who he writes for or has written for. He said, back then we've been at war in Afghanistan for almost a full decade. Obviously it was 2 decades, almost. We've been at war in Iraq for nearly as long. We're at war in Pakistan. Again, this is from back in 2013. A war in Yemen. Then they got Iran, Venezuela and Libya. It's not very often, is it, that people associate Obama with bombs, but he did. He bombed more countries than Bush did. And he won a Nobel Peace Prize. Incredible. This is an instance of blatant propaganda that you will see, that this is a worse kind of propaganda. Again, I don't want to concentrate on this tonight. I want to concentrate on the lies of omission rather, but this is one story that the Washington Post and many other outlets ran with. Russian forces take Chernobyl being in Ukraine, they said, and Rachel Maddow was really interested in this and all the talking heads at Microsoft. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you? MSNBC? Not many of you realise that. Microsoft NBC, what the MS stands for. And Microsoft, I think I think they were buying out, was it General Electric or the news arm of General Electric at the time? So yeah, there you go. It was a sort of a collaboration between Microsoft and the public relations wing for, well, the fossil fuel company, I suppose. And people wonder why it's all propaganda. Rachel Maddow was all giddy about this, about them taking over Chernobyl, wondering about what reaction there could be. Oh, it could be a disaster, the Washington Post said. Could be a disaster. I've actually cut that off down there. But they were saying it could be a disaster. And this guy, who is the national security sort of analyst, he's an expert over at MSNBC, US intelligence, 36 years. He's an expert on terrorism, extremist ideology. You know he's an expert because obviously he's got all those things in his bio. He's got Ukrainian flag there, showing solidarity. He's got a blue tick. And he wrote a book on They Want to Kill Americans. So we're sure that this isn't going to be propaganda coming from him about Chernobyl, aren't we? Oh, wait, no. He's saying it powers central northern Ukraine. Chernobyl's been offline for decades. So, yeah, that's the sort of propaganda that you're seeing right now. It goes further, though, this guy does. You can see how giddy they are for war. You know, they've got a real thirst for war, these people have, over at MSNBC. Microsoft NBC. You would think, you know, the liberal outlet it's meant to be, isn't it, over in America, MSNBC? But no, this is the sort of people that they employ. He's, oh my God, watch this, just in case, tears of laughter, look. That's allegedly a recording of people giving their last stand against the Russian forces. There's reports that these 13 people were killed. And here's Malcolm Nance from MSNBC laughing about it joyously. They've got a real thirst for war, these people have. A real thirst. You might remember this. When Trump bombed Syria. Was it Trump?
Pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons. And they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield. What did they hit? What are you convinced going to...
Like I say, these people are thirsty for war. These outlets, they love it. Their ratings go through the roof whenever war breaks out. And they're giddy right now. So there's lots of instances of, you know, blatant propaganda and propaganda that is in your face and it's really obvious to see. But there's lots of instances, and there's if you watch corporate media and legacy media, like I have to sort of deconstruct it all, you'll see a lot of propaganda that you see around wartime is not just what's said, like the title of the video says. It's what's not said. It's what's left out. Because if you leave a giant chunk of a story out, and you read that story to somebody, they're going to get a totally nuanced view of things, aren't they? You know, if you leave out, I don't know, I'll take a nurse. If you leave out the fact that, let's leave out Cinderella actually having to leave from the ball and getting dressed in a glass slipper and meeting Prince Charming. Let's leave that part of the story out. If you leave that part of the story out, Prince Charming is just a nutter with a foot fetish, you know, who's running around just trying to molest people's feet. You see what I mean, don't you? If you leave a giant chunk of the story out, you can infer anything you like, really. So propaganda is very selective in what it does tell you and what it leaves out and what it doesn't. And I'm going to show you an example here of this is the person who I believe is the best of corporate media, you know, of the people who are on Sky News, BBC One, through to Channel 4, Channel 5 in this country. This person I believe is the best. Now, you might disagree with me. You might say this person is awful, and to which that's your opinion. I'm just telling you, I think he's the best of a bad bunch, and they're all... I'm going to show you this 3-minute video that he's done. I got it off TikTok. I don't know whether this is his account that's put that on TikTok, but it's 3 minutes, and that's all you've got on TikTok. And he's obviously done this for the BBC. His name's Ross Atkins. I think he's very good, but I'm going to show you a 3-minute video that he's done on Ukraine here, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the video deconstructing the propaganda in it. Okay, and please show this to Ross Atkins, by the way. I would love his input on this, and I'd love some feedback as to, you know, my observations. So I'm going to play it all for 3 minutes. I'm going to play the lot, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay?
Ukraine's independence came in 1991. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and as it splintered, a number of new nations emerged. Ukraine was one of the largest. Its population was 52 million. It was 1,200 kilometers from east to west. And as democracy moved east, this was a moment of optimism. In 1991, Ukrainians celebrated their first election. The US called it momentous. But for all the enthusiasm, democracy couldn't change Ukraine's geography or its history. To the east was Russia. To the west was Poland, Slovakia and Hungary. All three had communist pass. By 2004, all three had joined the European Union.
Notice how he said all three joined the European Union there. Okay, European Union he mentioned.
Being pro-Russia or pro-Europe became a fundamental dividing line in Ukrainian politics, and months later we saw how. Amidst allegations of electoral fraud, what became known as the Orange Revolution began, and two men were the focus. Viktor Yanukovych, who was pro-Russia and who'd initially been declared the winner, and Viktor Yushchenko, here on the right, who was pro-Europe and would become president after a new vote. And while the outcome of that election was settled, relations with Russia were not. In 2010, there was a further twist. Yanukovych was re-elected, and then in 2013, he would take a decision with huge ramifications.
As EU leaders arrived for the Eastern Partnership Summit, something was missing. The centrepiece was supposed to have been the signing of an association agreement with Ukraine.
But it didn't happen. Under pressure from Russia, Yanukovych walked away from that deal with the EU, and another revolution would begin. There were weeks of protests and crackdowns, and in the end, Yanukovych would flee this country estate just outside Kiev and head for Russia. Watching from Moscow was Vladimir Putin. This was his cue to act. First, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. It's a peninsula on the Black Sea. Weeks later, pro-Russia rebels seized two regions in the east of Ukraine. Russia already divided Ukrainian politics. Now Putin was dividing the country itself. But the turn towards the West that frustrated him then remains now. One recent poll shows 68% of Ukrainians are in favour of joining the EU. Putin, though, sees Russians and Ukrainians as one people, a single whole. That perception may explain this invasion today, but perhaps there's something else too. The 90s brought a surge of democratic optimism. To Ukraine's current president, this invasion is showing us what Putin thinks of that.
Putin started a war against Ukraine, against the whole democratic world. He wants to destroy my country. He wants to destroy our country. Everything we've been building, everything we live for.
That effort to build a nation began as Ukraine emerged from the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Today, as Russia invades, Ukrainians are seeing the extent of Putin's resentment of what happened then and what's happened since.
So there you go. That's Ross Atkins, update on Ukraine. That's his 3 minutes update. I got to tell you, that is, Ross, if you're watching, it's great propaganda. It's wonderful propaganda. As a journalist, wow, did you miss some huge chunks of information off there if you're actually trying to educate the public, which is one of the three things that the BBC is charged with doing: education, informing, entertaining. So, like I say, not all propaganda is lies. A lot of propaganda, much of it, is lies of omission. and we're going to go through now a few of the things that Ross missed off there in his 3-minute video. Now, I realise that he's only got 3 minutes, and this is going to be a lot longer, this deconstruction of it. But I think it's fair to say that there's quite a bit that he's missed off his reporting there. Often, we in independent media get accused of only reporting one side of things. This, what you saw there with Ross, is why. It's a perfect example of why we only tend to go down the... I would love to have a nuanced conversation about all the things that Ross brought up there, all the things he did say. I would love to have that conversation. But you can't have that conversation until everybody has got the information from all of the information. Once you've got all the information, then you can have a talk and a conversation. But until then, you know, most of what we do is just filling in the blanks that the corporate media miss off. For example, he talked there about 90s to the present day. And I made a note. I stopped the video and made a note. He mentioned Poland, Slovakia and Hungary joining the EU. Okay, so he's gone all the way back to the 90s. And he's mentioned them joining the EU. And he's mentioned, you know, Ukraine sort of being split between pro-Europe and pro-Russia. Okay. And that's what he's basically framed it. He didn't mention the United States' role in any of the stuff that he talked about. And that, to be quite honest, with everything that's gone on in Ukraine over the last 20 years, is absolutely staggering, Ross. How did you not mention it? Did you think that you were doing a good job by leaving that out? Who do you work for? Do you work for the British people to inform the British people, or do you work for the United States? Telling the public what they approve. 2013, that revolution, as he called it, where the presidents ran to Russia. He didn't mention the United States' role in that. He didn't mention, well, I mean, just in the lead up to it, how much the United States were investing in the Ukraine for, I think, 20 years previous that. Here's Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland was the Secretary of State to the European Union, I think, during the coup, around the time that happened. They were pouring $5 billion into Ukraine, the United States were, before that coup. Listen to Victoria Nuland brag about it. Is it 7:30, I think this is? Just bear me a second. I just want to read this as well for you. Now I'll come back to that. Here we go. Come back to that. 7:30.
States has supported Ukrainians as they build democratic skills and institutions, as they promote civic participation and good governance, all of which are preconditions for Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. We've invested over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these and other goals that will ensure a secure and prosperous and democratic Ukraine.
So that's $5 billion that will ensure a secure and prosperous and democratic Ukraine. Well, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean what she's trying to make you think it means. This is what we're doing in Russia right now. The Reuters, BBC and Bellingcat participated in covert UK Foreign Office funded programmes to weaken Russia, leaked documents reveal. This is what we're doing right now in Russia. They say it's for securing democracy and freedom and blah, 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 blah. No, what it is undermining whatever government is in power to try and unsettle it, to try and, fund the fringes, to rile them up. And when I say fringes in Ukraine, I mean neo-Nazis. You know, none of this is, they don't really care about Ukrainians in all this. They care about hegemony and, you know, expanding their sphere of influence and limiting Russia's. So we're doing this right now in Russia. Yes, do you pay taxes in the UK? Do you pay for your TV license? If so, money that you pay is going towards funding this anti-Russian stuff in Russia. Meanwhile, we've got queues at food banks like you wouldn't believe. I often think, you know, when you're filling out your tax return, when you're filling it out, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could pick how much of your money goes to what? It's like, right, okay, I'll put 10% to the armed forces, I'll put 15% to education, I'll put 20% towards health, I'll put 47% towards propaganda in Russia. You know, you see what I mean? This is what she's talking about there, Victoria Nuland. She's talking about investing it in, you know, programs that are there to undermine the Ukrainian government, or dictator, as they called him. That's what she's talking about. But it's not just that. She went much further than that, and we know that because of a leaked phone call. This is before, oh shit, just took my face away then. This is before the president was ousted, before he went to Russia. And this is Victoria Nuland, who I just showed you, who was the ambassador to Europe at the time, on the phone to the US ambassador to Ukraine a few weeks before the coup. She had 5 visits, I think, in 3 weeks or something like that, or 3 visits in 5 weeks. This is what went on in one of them. I'm going to play this whole tape for you. It's 5 minutes long. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. What this is proof that the United States was up to its neck in regime change in 2013. In Ukraine, on the opposite side of the world, bordering Russia.
What do you think?
I think we're in play. The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you think... What, in terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yachts is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Cleach and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. You know, I just think Cleach going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, I had it myself on mute there. Yats was the guy. Yats became president. Yats indeed was the guy. You can see there, that's Victoria Nuland on the phone to the ambassador to the Ukraine, talking about who they're going to install as president in that so-called orange revolution that Ross Atkins didn't tell you any of this, did he? Eh?
I think that's right. Okay. Good. Well, do you want us to try to set up a call with him as the next step?
My understanding from that call, but you tell me, was that the big 3 were going into their own meeting and that Yats was going to offer in that context a three-way, the 3+1 conversation or 3+2 with you. Is that not how you understood it?
No, I mean, that's what he proposed, but I think just knowing the dynamic that's been with them where Klitschko has been the top dog, he's going to take a while to show up for whatever meeting they've got. He's probably talking to his guys at this point. So I think you reaching out directly to him helps with the personality management among the three, and it gives you also a chance to...
Can you see they're literally organising the government that is going to come in and take over? Now they've ousted when they oust this guy, because it looked like he was about to be ousted. They're literally picking the president here. Americans.
Move fast on all this stuff.
And by the way, this is during the Obama administration. Remember I said 2 wars to 7? They're up to their neck in this as well. They're up to their neck in regime change in Ukraine.
Put us behind it before they all sit down, and he explains why he doesn't like it.
Okay, good. I'm happy. Why don't you reach out to him and see if he wants to talk before or after?
Now remember, during this, there's violent protests going on in Ukraine, and they're calmly talking about who's going to take over as president. There's violent protests going on. They haven't ousted the president yet. These people don't care about Ukrainian people. They don't. But if you listen to Ross Atkins' report, the Russians are the bad guys, and Ukrainians just want democracy.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Okay, I've now written, one more wrinkle for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I told you this or if I only told Washington this, that when I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah,
okay.
I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, fuck the EU.
No, exactly. And I think we've got to do something.
So they don't care about the EU either. They don't care about the EU, and they don't care about the Ukraine. They don't care about people in Europe. They don't care about people in Ukraine. They care about installing their own little government on Russia's border.
Thing to make it stick together, because you can be pretty sure that if it does start to gain altitude, the Russians will be working behind the scenes to try to torpedo it.
I wonder why.
And again, the fact that this is out there right now, I'm still trying to figure out in my mind why Yanukovych that. But in the meantime, there's a Party of Regions faction meeting going on right now, and I'm sure there's a lively argument going on in that group at this point. But anyway, we could land jelly side up on this one if we move fast. So let me work on Klitschko, and if you can just keep, I think we want to try to get somebody with an international personality to come out here and help to midwife this thing. And then the other issue is some kind of outreach to Yanukovych, but we probably regroup on that tomorrow as we see how things start to fall into place.
So on that piece, Jeff, when I wrote the note, Sullivan's come back to me, VFR, saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick. So
okay.
Biden's willing.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thanks.
So Biden's involved in this as well. Biden was up to his neck in it. Of course he was. Biden was given the job of being point man, because he was vice president at the time. Remember, he's president now. He was vice president at the time in Ukraine. Vice president at the time in America, and Obama appointed him as the point man to Ukraine. Ross Atkins, I know he's only got 3 minutes again, but he didn't mention any of this, did he? He hasn't mentioned any of this at all. No mention that the United States basically installed that Ukrainian government. They showed he showed Yanukovych's country estate there. Do you remember just showing? Yeah, look, he was a dictator and he was corrupt. Well, he failed to mention that Joe Biden, when he was installed as point man to Ukraine, I can't believe this. I think one of his things was he had to, sort out the corruption in Ukraine. His son, Hunter Biden, who had, a few weeks before, I think, got a discharge from the military because he failed a drugs test. He got a discharge from the military because he failed a drugs test. And then all of a sudden, his dad gets appointed point man to Ukraine, and he finds himself on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, getting paid $1 million a year. Nice work if you can get it, isn't it? By the way, if he has got a bit of a drug problem, then that's okay. But you know, everybody should get a second chance. I'm sure everything was totally fine, and you know, he recovered well. Oh, yeah, we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. So he didn't mention any of that. There's something else he didn't mention either, which I find strange as well, considering he went back all the way to the 90s there, Ross. He didn't mention it's 14,000 people now. This is from 2019. 14,000 people were killed in the Donbass region after the United States instigated and then played out that coup in 2013. Didn't mention those 14,000 dead Ukrainians. Didn't mention that. He mentioned that the 90s were, quote, a surge for optimism. Do you remember he mentioned that? A surge for optimism. He didn't mention the fact that, oh yeah, the United States were meddling in Russia's elections in the 90s as well. Don't you remember? This is from the Washington Post. As the president, they were talking about how Donald Trump had reportedly asked some countries for help. Well, Yeltsin did it. Pro-Western. This is from the Washington Post. President Boris Yeltsin, polling in the single digits. He went on to be president of Russia. And then obviously oversaw pretty much the economic collapse of Russia. And that's when Putin came in and had to pick up the pieces with, well, they say that the poverty was that bad, people were killing pigeons in Red Square in Moscow to feed themselves. From the Washington Post, President Boris Yeltsin, polling in the single digits, met with the United States President Bill Clinton in the Kremlin and complained that his prospects for re-election were, quote, not exactly brilliant. So began Yeltsin's campaign to get an American president to influence Russia's 96 election. His first request concerned NATO, which Clinton had been working to enlarge. Quote, let's postpone NATO expansion for a year and a half or 2 years, Yeltsin suggested, according to a newly released US government transcripts. There's no need to rile up the situation before elections. NATO? Ross Atkins didn't mention NATO, did he? Strange. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. Clinton responded carefully. This is Bill Clinton, explaining that on the issue, on this issue, a win-win was possible. I've made it clear I'll do nothing to accelerate NATO expansion, he said. I'm trying to give you now, in this conversation, the reassurance you need. But we need to be careful that neither of us appears to capitulate. Obviously, you have a public position and a private position. Isn't that what Hillary Clinton, his wife, said? Ross Atkins didn't mention any of this, did he? By the way, the Clinton family. Meddling in elections, look. Surely they'd never do that again, would they? He did talk about democracy a few times, didn't he, Ross, in that video? And if he cares about democracy so much, like he says that, you know, obviously he mentioned democracy, democracy that's at stake here. Did he mention that the Ukrainian president has been imprisoning journalists and shutting down media outlets in the last few years that are critical of him? Do democracies do that, or do dictators do it? You have to ask the question, how much of a democracy really is it? Especially if the United States have been involved in all sorts of stuff over there going back 20 years. I mean, just imagine what sort of people they've been able to buy off. Or, you know what? Hey, bribe. Genius. Go and check Jeffrey Epstein's flight log. See if he spent any time in Ukraine during the 90s and early 2000s. Somebody get on that. Write it down. But if, like I say, if he is so pro-democratic, as a journalist he should be, surely, as a Western journalist anyway, why didn't he mention the fact that his fellow journalists are being imprisoned in Ukraine and media outlets being shut down? Shutting down stations that are critical of the government. Like I say, in 3 minutes, he's only got time to say so much, but how he can go through 3 minutes to talk about a whole 3 minutes and not talk about NATO when you're talking about Ukraine and Russia, or mention the United States having an involvement in it at all. The only time he mentioned the US was to say the US said the democracies were groundbreaking or something like that. The elections were groundbreaking in the 90s. That's it. Didn't mention their involvement in any of it since 2013. Why? What are you? What type of picture are you trying to paint, Ross? You're trying to paint this war's bad. Oh, sanctions, bad Russia. And don't get me wrong, I'm not pro this war at all. Like I say, people are dying. It should never have got to this stage. But that's my point. Had NATO said Ukraine will not join NATO, it wouldn't have got to this stage, and you know it. They weaponised NATO's, quote, open door policy. Just as they'll weaponise racism and sexual misconduct, etc. Just to get their own way. It doesn't matter. Other instances, they'll obviously ignore. He mentioned 3 governments, didn't he? Do you remember he mentioned 3 countries? What were they? He mentioned Poland. He mentioned... What were those 3 countries he mentioned? He mentioned Poland, Hungary and Slovakia, look. So, there's Poland. They joined in 99. Slovakia, over there. It cuts my hand off. Slovakia, they joined in 99. And... Sorry, no. Hungary joined in 99. And the other one was Slovakia in 2004. But that's the EU. He said they joined the EU, but he didn't mention that those countries joined NATO. And isn't that what all this is about? Especially from Russia's side of things? Look at all these countries that are joining NATO. They're on the border of Russia. If your neighbour, if you have a new neighbour move in on both sides or 3 sides, if you're cornered in on 3 sides, and the new neighbours move in and start pointing missiles at you and say it's for defence, you're going to have something to say about it, aren't you? And he didn't mention that once. I know he's only got 3 minutes, but Ross, come on, mate. Often we get accused of being one-sided in independent media. This is why. We have to present all the stuff that you miss on purpose. And this is on purpose. Because there's no way Ross Atkins at the BBC doesn't know all of the stuff that I've just told you. And it's not like he doesn't know that all of the stuff I just told you is true and verifiable. I've shown you recordings. I've showed you receipts. But he misses all that out. He failed to mention all of that. Isn't that incredible? In that 3-minute video, he's failed to mention Nord Stream 2. He failed to mention, oh yeah, Nord Stream 2, it cuts my hand off here, but you can see up there where the Baltic Sea is, goes from Russia down to Germany. Instead of going through Ukraine. Ukraine get transit payments from Russia for oil going through into Europe. And obviously when this happened and the coup happened, Russia were like, well, we're gonna have to not send you any gas. They don't buy any gas through Russia now. The new thing runs out, I think, in 2014. And after that, it was going to be Nord Stream 2 through the Baltic Sea, which bypasses Ukraine, meaning they don't get their billions in transit payments from oil through to Europe. How can Ross not mention any of that in 3 minutes? Any of it? Or the fact that the United States was sanctioning Nord Stream 2. That was Trump. Biden's just made sure that it's got the kibosh on it. And isn't that one of the things that this was all about? The United States getting their own way? He hasn't mentioned any of this. These are lies of omission, Ross. And like I said, I started this off by saying you're the best, I think, on TV. On that evidence, it's kind of like saying you're the tallest kid on class, isn't it? And just in case you think I've been unfair on this guy, like I say, I think he's the best. But you need to see something. Because, as I said, right at the top of this and all the way through this video, propaganda isn't just what you're told. It's what you're not told. It's the lies of omission. And Ukraine is not the only war going on in the world right now. Strange as it you may seem, you may think, really, there's another one? I haven't heard of it on the news forever. Afghanistan finished. Well, there's a war in Yemen right now. And I want to show you this. This is Ross Atkins' Twitter feed. Oops. So this is Ross Atkins from BBC Ross Atkins. Let me refresh this so you get an up-to-date feed. So this is Ross Atkins. This is his Twitter feed. And this is every single time he's mentioned Yemen. Look, there's a video there 21 hours ago. There's a video there 10 hours ago. February the 22nd, there's another video he's done. 1 hour ago, he did another video. November the 19th, 2021, there was another video. Another video February the 11th, another video Jan 24th, another video 24th of Feb. 11th of February, there's another video. January 25th, there's another video. All of those are just video. That's just the videos. You know, that's just the videos he's done. Like I say, all of these are mentions and links to, there's links to articles that he's done here. Look at that. He's been talking about Ukraine for years. Certainly, you know, going back 2019. So there's 3 years he's been talking about it, and he cannot stop talking about it. They can't stop talking about Ukraine in the media, can they? Well, surely if he's not a propagandist, he'll be talking about all wars in equal measure, especially a war going on, I don't know, let's pick one. Oh yeah, Yemen. The largest humanitarian crisis on the planet. That's United Nations. That's what they say. There's an outbreak of cholera right now in Yemen. I think it was 2 years ago, it was called the largest outbreak of cholera in history ever. We're in the 2020s. And Saudi Arabia, who are waging the war against Yemen, target their water towers. There's an article in Mint Press News that covers that. You should go and check it out. So you would think he will talk about Yemen a lot, wouldn't he? No videos. Not a single video. And that is it. Goes all the way back to 2011, right? 2011 this goes back. I showed you the videos that he'd been doing about Ukraine just in the last 2-3 years. That is all the times he's spoken about Yemen. I don't think he's spoken about it since 2016. He hasn't spoke about Yemen for 6 years. Certainly he hasn't talked about it enough. They haven't done a segment on it at all, which is kind of incredible, don't you think? Because this is a war that we support. This is not Russia going after it. This is Saudi Arabia. This is an ally of ours. And when I say ally, I mean we sell them the weapons. We sell them the planes. We maintain the planes that are used to bomb Yemen. We sell them the weapons that those planes use to bomb the poorest country in the Middle East, Yemen, in a humanitarian crisis that has displaced millions of people. And I think they said 14 million people right now starving. And Ross Atkins hasn't talked about it for 6 years. 2015, 2016. No, 2016. Like I say, we're supporting this. Declassified have done a great video on this. You should go watch it. There's a link there in the tweet. You can see. This is a former Foreign Office lawyer, Molly Mulready, being interviewed about how Boris Johnson was casual and joking whenever the subject of Yemen came up. And when your media aren't holding the government to account on a war that they're supporting and they're not even mentioning it, is it any wonder he's laughing and joking and being so blasé? Listen to her words. You should watch this, by the way. This is not the worst. She's almost crying in this interview, if you go and watch the full video.
Boris Johnson was very casual and jokey when we would go in to talk to him about arms to Saudi Arabia. We would go in to brief him.
I mean, where's Ross Atkins' video on that? You know, where's Ross Atkins' video on the Prime Minister of this country laughing and joking about death in Yemen? He'll talk about Ukraine non-stop, like there's no tomorrow. Why isn't he talking about Yemen? We're supporting this.
Him about Yemen, and he would just joke around and waste everybody's time, and it was a bit mind-blowing because it was, you're discussing civilian casualties, you're discussing the fact that innocent people have died and that British supplied bombs have played a part in that.
Like I say, our support, it's from our support that is enabling Saudi Arabia to do this. Without our support, they would struggle. They wouldn't be able to do it. They certainly wouldn't be able to bomb them with our weapons and our planes. So we've sold them the planes. We've trained the pilots, by the way. We trained their pilots to go and do this. We were operational. We were picking out targets. I saw some reports a few years ago, although the MIOD did deny that. But we're pretty much doing everything, and if that's the case and that was true, we're pretty much doing everything but pull the trigger. We're supplying the weapons, we're supplying the planes, we're maintaining the planes, and we're training the pilots. Are we going to pick out the targets for them as well? Do you see what I mean? And Ross Atkins and the BBC, they don't want to talk about this. Well, here's one outlet that does. Like I say, Declassified UK, you should subscribe to them. They're excellent. This is a plane taking off, being recorded, taking off from UK soil, going over with parts to service these planes in Saudi Arabia, which is committing war crimes, crimes against humanity in Yemen, causing the largest humanitarian crisis on the planet right now that we're supporting, and our media is silent but cannot stop talking about Ukraine. This video by Declassified proves if we pulled our support for Saudi Arabia, we pulled our support for these planes, we stopped maintaining them, there wouldn't be a plane in the sky over Yemen within 2 weeks. We're enabling this.
This flight is carrying cargo which will help the Saudi Arabians maintain their air force and their Typhoon fighter jets, which are being used to pummel Yemen and have created the world's worst humanitarian disaster here. So you're looking at a key piece in the Saudi war machine taking off from the heart of Lancashire. Here we go.
Journalism. That's journalism. Journalism is printing something the powerful don't want you to print, and everything else is public relations. propaganda. When you're listening, if you do listen, or anybody you talk to is listening to mainstream media, make sure that they're aware they're not getting the full story at best, and at worst, they're getting outright lies. Because the people giving you the news and talking to the people on the news who are thirsty for this war, they're profiting from it in some cases. And in other cases, they're just propagandists for hire. I would be really interested in some sort of feedback from Ross Atkins. If somebody can show him this, that would be great. It's like I say, I think he's one of the best on TV, if not the best that we've got. But if the best that we've got can miss out all of the stuff that I've given you in a 3-minute video. Granted, he's only got 3 minutes, but I think I've proved he's left out an awful lot. I mean, if you leave all of that information out, you are going to infer a totally different thing than you infer from the 3 minutes he gave you, aren't you? I want to know why our journalists won't call America out for their election meddling, for their hegemony, and for their bloodthirsty warmongering. I'd like to know just who our journalists are supposedly holding to account and who they're actually working for. Because as much as I hear in the media right now, oh, RT are the worst, they're propagandists, we've got to get RT off the air. I got to tell you something. RT do their share of propaganda, of course they do, every network does. But when it comes to the last 4 or 5 years since I've been doing this, they're way more honest than anything you're going to get from the BBC. And I'll go so far as to say that if you're listening to the BBC, you will get a more skewed view of reality and what's going on in the world right now than you will do if you listen to Alex Jones. Because Alex Jones will tell you all the stuff I've just told you. Ross Atkins won't. All right. Do. Hi everybody. How are you? Let's go into the comments. Oh, did I see a super chat? Thank you, the Lemon 8787. That's very nice of you. Thank you. I need to show you. There's only a couple of other things. Mind you, I mean that story was 45 minutes, wasn't it? There's only a couple of other things I want to talk to you about tonight. And I've just realised I can't talk to you about the one thing because the video hasn't rendered. Let me see if I can find the other thing. Bam, bam, bam. Don't you think that was incredible? I mean, don't you think that's incredible? Look at all the times he's mentioned Ukraine. Look at all these videos that he's done on it. And this is just the videos that he's done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 videos since January. 10 videos since January the 24th he's done, and he's mentioned Yemen, what, 12 times in over a decade? And most of those mentions, he wasn't mentioning the war or the humanitarian crisis or the cholera or anything like that. But that's how you get a job on the BBC. That's where your TV license money is going to him. Yeah, and people like him. And like I say, I've got nothing against the guy. He might be lovely, he might think he's doing a great job, I don't know. But come on, Ross. If you're a journalist and you don't know all the stuff that I've just explained in that video, it's like, You're outing yourself, mate. I don't make propaganda, I just point it out. Thank you, Paul. Paul K. Sent me £10 on PayPal. Thank you very much. Must meet one day. Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. Must come to one of the protests. Sure, there's bound to be one soon. I think there's one at the beginning of May, actually. I think I heard that there was an Assange one at the beginning of May. I'll give you updated. I'll keep you updated on that. My Twitter thread. That really is incredible, though. It really is incredible. Just make sure. How many times did he mention Yemen? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 27 times he's tweeted about Yemen. And most of them are in 2011, before this war broke out. So that's about something totally different. And he hasn't tweeted about it since 2016. 6 years. And he's talking about he's talking about the ousted Yemeni dictator, who the pro-Saudi dictator, who was ousted in the coup back then. If I remember right, he was assassinated. I think that's right. So he's talking about that, him being ousted and going to Saudi in 2011, but he's not. There you go. He's talked about there not getting much coverage. Not getting much coverage. He'll say not getting much coverage in 2014. What changed since then, Ross? What changed? I wonder what. It's not getting much coverage. Well, maybe because journalists aren't goddamn talking about it. Maybe because journalists haven't mentioned Yemen for 6 years on their Twitter. Wars that we in the UK support. Don't you think the public should know about that? Like I say, he's the best, and I'm mad as hell at him. He's one of the best anyway. It's just incredible. Incredible. Mentioned Yemen 15 times on his Twitter, and he's done what, 12 videos on Ukraine since January. Unbelievable. Right. There's just one other thing I want to talk about. I did a video about Biden that I was going to talk about, but it's on my TikTok. Go and see my TikTok. I dropped it, I think, yesterday. I've dropped another one today. So if you're not subscribed on TikTok, please go and subscribe on there. Going quite well. That's Alan McLeod again. 7 defence stocks to buy as Ukraine crisis heats up. That's from January the 28th on Yahoo. Yeah, that's the video on there. So yeah, it's this. I wanted to show you this because Dr. Strangelove wasn't satirical enough. This is Nancy Pelosi. Now, Nancy Pelosi is the leader of the Democrats in the House in America. That means, I think she's third in line for the presidency. I think that's right. She's the third top Democrat. This is her getting mixed up between Hungary and Ukraine. She's trying to explain. Explain the Ukraine. This is before Putin's troops went in. So she's trying to explain, just how surrounded Hungary is. Not, well, Ukraine, but she calls it Hungary. Take a look.
Some of the leadership of well, if you look at the map and you see Hungary and you see how it is encircled, Russia, Belarus, Crimea, which they have taken over but had, it's still a danger now to Ukraine, and then you see Poland and Romania and all of those countries just abutting against Russian influence.
Abutting Russian influence. Abutting Russian influence. Play it again. Play it again. Catch it. She does call it Hungary, by the way. But they're all abutting. Russians all surround it, and they're having to abut this Russian influence. Look.
Some of the leadership of well, if you look at the map and you see Hungary and you see how it is encircled, Russia, Belarus, Crimea, which they have taken over but had, it's still a danger now to Ukraine, and then you see Poland and Romania and all of those countries just abutting against Russian influence.
She's like a drunk aunt at a wedding reception, isn't she? Abutting Russian influence, look. All those countries. They're all abutting, see, Russia and Belarus and Ukraine. It's all those abutting Russian influence. It's kind of funny that she was saying about that, about all those countries abutting Russian influence because, Russia was surrounding it. Kind of funny that is, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? Especially if you think, imagine how Iran feels. All those countries surrounding, abutting Russian influence. Imagine how Iran feels. Those are that isn't Russian influence or American influence, by the way. Those are military bases. There's a lot more than they're actually admitting there to. Goes along with the theme, doesn't it? Propaganda isn't just what you're told. A lot of the times, and most of it, it's what you're not told. All right, thanks everybody. I am, third in line, says Michael Mike, as Speaker of the House. That's kind of incredible, isn't it? Third in line. You get the president you deserve, though. You get the leader you deserve. I swear we do. We've got Boris Johnson, and we deserve him. We do. Who have we got as Prime Minister in this country? Who have we got as leader? We've got a fool. A clown. That's exactly what we are. We're fools. We're clowns. We're fools for putting up with these people for so long. We're clowns for going along with any of it. We're clowns for believing them. We're fools for letting the BBC propagandise us and just not even, you got to pay your BBC licence. Why? Well, otherwise you'll go to prison. What? So I either get Ross Atkins propagandise me by omission or I go to prison. Those are the two things. No, thank you. I'll try and opt out of that, please. Trump was perfect for America. Brash. A bully, total capitalist, loves profit over everything and everything else, a liar, couldn't believe anything that he said. He's perfect. And now Biden is too. Senile, pretty much. No, it hasn't got a clue what it's doing. Perfect. But then it's not Americans' fault. It's not their fault at all. It's the people who are leading them. We need to ditch these systems that we've got because they're screaming about democracy in the media like it's something sacred and we haven't got it at home. I'm old enough to remember our elections back here. Look at what they did to Jeremy Corbyn. Nobody can say that was democratic. And as for America, Jesus Christ, did you see the last two elections? Or are you a goldfish and you've forgotten already? It's about time our media talk about the stuff that's really important and doesn't cheer on war while absolutely ignoring The wars that we are complicit in. How often do you think the BBC have told you in the last couple of weeks about Amnesty International calling Palestine an apartheid state, committing crimes against humanity? How often do you think they've mentioned that? Hardly any. But they mentioned over and over and over that Julian Assange was, quote, a rapist who had to face, quote, charges in Sweden, even though there was never any charges and he wasn't accused of rape, not as we see it over here. Anyway. But people like Ross get the big bucks. He gets the job. He gets to tell people lies and gets paid to do it. And then you have to go to prison if you don't and refuse to pay the license fee that pays his wages. Meanwhile, I haven't got a pot to piss in. The truth doesn't pay. But that's not why we do it. We don't do it for payment. We do it because it's a public service. Although getting paid would be nice. Thank you very much to everybody who has supported me. Gordon has back pain, says Lawrence. He hasn't been doing my exercises. I haven't had back pain for years, Lawrence. I'll tell you, I haven't had back pain for years. It wasn't your exercises, but it was exercises that solved it. I started doing exercise and running and getting fit, and I started doing yoga as well. And my back pain has gone now. And I stopped smoking. That was huge as well because you're all hunched over. Yeah, that solved my back pain. Anybody? Well, I mean, if you look at my videos from when I first started doing YouTube, I used to complain about my back all the time. But not anymore. Right, Ellie says goodbye. She always knows when I'm leaving, don't she? You always know, don't you? All right, Ellie says goodbye, and I'm off too. Take care, everybody. Look out for the propaganda. Please tell as many people as you possibly can about the information that I've given you on Ukraine. Please spread the word. We've got to fight back against this torrent of bullshit and this torrent of lies by omission that is thrown at us by the mainstream media. Like I say, I just gave you what I considered to be one of the best videos that I've seen so far, and even that was riddled with propaganda. So you can see, you can obviously take a wild guess as to how bad some of the worst cases are of it. All right, take care, everybody. Love you all. Please support independent media. And as always, free Julian Assange. Take care, everybody. I'll see you very soon.